All right, we're good to go here on Facebook and just got YouTube going. Good morning from, again, sunny and beautiful Oregon. A nice day today. So I hope if you live around here, you can get out and enjoy it. And if you live somewhere else, I hope you're having um, a beautiful day as well. And we've been going through Psalm 23. And just little by little going through this chapter, and we're in verse 4, Psalm 23, and verse 4. Good morning, Melissa and Anita. Good to see you guys, and those that will be tuning in a little bit later to watch this. Psalm 23 and verse 4 again, which we've been looking at, says, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me." We've been talking about this verse for quite some time. The fact that Jesus is a present shepherd. He's there with us in the midst of difficulties. The Bible says he leads us through the valley of the shadow of death. Not into it, but it's something we go through because there's eternity on the other side. There's heaven on the other side, and Jesus can confidently lead us, and we can follow him there because he's been that way before. He's defeated sin, death, and the grave. And the Bible says, he says, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'll fear no evil, for thou art with me." And then he says these words. He says, "Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me." Um, I was thinking about my own life and the number of comforts, even in the midst of everything that's going on, that we have right now. Technology and furnished homes, a full refrigerator, even being able to sit here in this room in this office and be able to do this is a comfort of home. And I understand not everybody has these, but many of us have compared to much of the world. We have a lot of comforts right now, but there are still people whose hearts are so anxious and so worried, and not just because of the virus, but because of all the possible repercussions. Some people just sit at home and think about all the repercussions that could come about because of the virus. And I understand it's a scary thing, and and it could be something that if somebody's not careful, it can just suck up all their energy and all their focus. But even in the midst of pending difficulty, the psalmist says, he says, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. If David lived in the 21st century, we might understand a little bit more if he said, that stimulus check comforted me, or the vacation that we have coming up, that'll comfort me, or the discovery of a viable vaccine, that would comfort me. But he says, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Those are not usually things that we think of as comforting instruments. A shepherd would basically carry with himself two instruments. What he says here, a rod and a staff. And this morning I want to look at the rod. Tomorrow we'll look at the staff. But the Bible says that your rod comforts me. A rod, what you need to think of, is basically a long, elongated club. Is basically what it is, and a staff is exactly what you'd think about a shepherd's staff. That has a little crook on the end, but the rod was used mostly to protect sheep. It was meant to be like a weapon. It was an instrument of authority. It was an instrument of power over the enemy. We even think about in the Bible Moses, the rod of Moses, and he had it, and he declared to the people of Israel, "The Lord shall fight for you." And so the rod was always this symbol of authority and power, and it was used to stave off the enemy. If a wolf would come or something else would come, it was used to strike that enemy, to keep the enemy at bay, to keep the enemy away. And so that was one of the things he knew, that God had a rod to keep the enemy away. That he was protected in that way. But another thing that the rod was used for was the rod was actually used as a tool. And on a regular basis, the shepherd would take that rod and he would stick it into the wool of the sheep, and he would separate the wool, um, so that he would split the wool so that he could see down into the sheep's skin, and he wanted to see if there were any diseases that were there or any wounds that were in the wool. And so the rod wasn't just used for the outward enemy; it was used to check for enemies within, not just the obvious ones like the wolves or the lions or the bears, but the small, ticks or other animals that could latch themselves onto the sheep, or any diseases or wounds that might be festering that you could barely see. And so it was used as a way to care for the sheep. The psalmist writes later on, David in Psalm 139, he says, "Search me, O God, know my heart, try me, know my ways, and see if there be any wicked way in me." And the psalmist was asking God to do. He says, "Look beneath the surface, beneath everything that you see right here in front of you. Look beneath that." One of the things that David took comfort in was that God protected him with his rod. And And I was thinking to myself, how often we thank God for the things that He starts. Thank you for this new job. Thank you for this new baby. Thank you for this whatever, all these new things that He starts. But how often we thank God for the things that He stops? He was thankful and taking comfort in the things that God stopped. He realized that the rod of God was used to protect him from the enemy without, and from the enemy within. And so I asked myself and asked you, will you allow God to use His rod in that way to comfort and protect you? Will you allow God to protect you, both from the things that are without, the enemies, the dangers that are out there, but also the things that are within? Will you allow God to take His word and shine His light into your life? And that's a great comfort. That's a great safety net, is for us to go, search me, oh God. Look beneath the wool. Pull my heart apart, pull my wool apart, and look and see if there are any wounds there, if there are any diseases there that need to be taken care of, and stop those things. And that was a comfort because he knew he was going to be healthy. The sheep knew he was going to be protected and he was going to be healthy. Um, for you and I, we can thank God for that as well. Thank you for your rod that protects me from the enemy without and from the enemy within. I know that on this difficult journey, that if I'm with my shepherd, if I'm abiding with my shepherd, that he will protect me. I'll be spiritually protected from those enemies. And so, Lord, use it. Use it to protect me from the enemies without. Use it to split my wool and check me out. Maybe that's something we need to ask the Lord to do today. Lord, search me, O God. Psalm 139, go read it. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my ways, and see if there be any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. And so a lot of times we don't think about that as comfort. But the sheep in Psalm 23, David knew that that was a comfort. The rod is a comforting instrument. Tomorrow, we're going to look at the staff, what the staff is used for, and how that comforted the psalmist. So thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you guys later on tonight. Join us for Family Night, 7 o'clock. Look forward to it.